Hey guys, welcome back to another video. Today we are going to talk about how to set realistic writing goals, which I know for a lot of us, this can be a big problem. So if you're interested in some of my best tips, keep watching. So some of you have heard me talk about this before, but setting writing goals is easy, right? You can just set a time and say, oh, I'm gonna write this many words per day. Where the trick comes in is setting realistic writing goals that you can actually achieve without feeling like you're falling way behind or that you're failing or that you're just not getting things done as fast as you should. So often right now, especially as indie authors, if you're an indie author, we're in this time where people are talking about rush, rapid release, get books out as fast as you can. But even though there are some authors who can really write fast, a book a month, a book every 2 weeks, not all of us are like that. Me, for example, my average is 2 to 3 books a year, which I feel like is actually still really, really good. Last year was my best year. I wrote 5, I actually published 5 books, wrote 6 books last year in 2018. But this year in 2019, because I've been pregnant and struggling to write because I have had major pregnancy brain, I have not finished or published a book at all this year. So depending on where you are in your life, what other things you have going on, whether you are dealing with a sick family member, your own chronic illness, or a full-time job, or changes in your environment, a move, whatever it is you're dealing with, it's important to set realistic writing goals for where you are in your life, to honor the seasons and the stages of your life by setting realistic goals. Because what happens more often than not with a lot of people who are overachievers or who have big dreams for their life is instead of setting realistic goals, which can sometimes feel painful because it's not fast enough, we will often set best case scenario goals. And this was a trap that I fell into pretty hardcore a few years back, where I said, instead of being realistic about what I could actually get done, I was expecting myself to be super Sarah, best writer I've ever been in my life, every single day, all the time. So instead of saying, okay, I usually can write 2 books a year, I'm going to set a goal to write 2 books a year, or even just bumping it up to 3, I would get to a point where I'd say, okay, this year I'm going to write 7 books. And I would set this ridiculous schedule. And those of you who have been around for a while or taken some of my courses have heard this story before, but it's worth repeating because it's a painful process that I went through, and I learned a lot from it, which is that I would go into Google Calendar and I would clear everything off so it was just a blank monthly calendar, and I would print it off for the entire year. Get my highlighters. You guys know, obviously I'm a planner girl. This is like procrastinating. I would take my highlighters, my washi tape, everything else, and I would come up with a color-coded system for which books I was going to write. And I would sit down with my stack of 12 monthly, calendars for the year, and I would come up with a schedule. But instead of being realistic about what I was going to work on, I would be super Sarah and say that, okay, if my best day is 3,000 words on average a day, I'm going to write 4,000 words a day because all I have to do is add an extra hour in and I know I can do it. So then I would expect myself to finish an 80,000 word book in 20 days. And I wasn't taking into consideration the fact that sometimes we get sick, or sometimes my son gets sick, or that I actually had a parent-teacher night and a course to give and a speaking gig during those 20 days. I would just say, oh, every day I'm going to write my absolute best word count ever. And then what would happen inevitably is after I had spent 2 or 3 days coming up with this perfect calendar where I was going to write 7 or 8 books in a year, I would get 2 weeks into the year and the whole schedule would be messed up because I was behind. So instead of writing those 80,000 words in 20 days, I would realize 20 days have gone by and I've only written 20,000 words. And so what I would do, instead of saying, okay, well, I'm going to adjust this schedule to be more realistic. No, that would have been too easy. Is I would go back to Google Calendar, reprint the entire year, set up with my highlighters, and figure out how I could get ahead. So instead of saying, well, now I'm going to back it up and only expect myself to write, the true average or realistic average of 2,000 words a day or 1,000 words a day, I would say, well, I've got to catch up because I'm way behind. And I would start to expect myself to write 5,000 words a day with no break in between and just go, 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 go. And of course, what would happen in another couple of weeks, I would be way behind again. And I was never hitting my goals. And that had a trickle down effect because not only was I behind, I was also super stressed and I was being extremely hard on myself mentally because I would go in and say things to myself like, why are you such a failure, Sarah? Why can't you get it together? Why can't you be a better writer? Look at how awful you're doing. You're completely failing. And I had all of this negative self-talk going on. And of course, that does not make it easy to be creative and to have fun. I wasn't having any fun with my work. And so it made me constantly feel burned out and just crummy and unhappy all the time. That had a trickle down effect to my family because I was snapping at my young son all the time. I was not being happy with my husband. I wasn't spending enough time with him. Whenever he would say, let's play a game together, I would be like, I can't afford to play a game. I'm way too busy. And I would just constantly be stressed. Well, I finally hit a point where I said, this is just not the way I want to live. And I'm sharing this with you guys because I have a feeling that some of you out there need to hear this because you're in the same place where I was a few years ago. And it's easy for me even now to slip back into that place where I feel like, especially right now, I've just had a baby 10 days ago as I'm recording this. And I haven't had a new book release all year. My sales are down. My income is down from those books. And so there's this sense of panic, like I need to catch up. I need to write. How many books can I write by the rest of the end of this year? So I feel those old tendencies of panic where I'm starting to say to myself, if I really work hard, how many books can I finish by the end of this year? Could I write 4,000 words a day? All this stuff. And so I have to step back and say, all right, how can I be realistic and be happy with what I'm getting done? So with that big intro, sharing my own experience, let me tell you what I think my biggest tips are for really setting realistic writing goals where you don't feel overwhelmed, but you're actually getting things done. So the first step is to know your averages. This is so important. When you are trying to figure out what your writing goals are going to be and how long it's going to take you to finish a book, it's important to know how long it takes you to write 1,000 words. Or if you have an hour, what's your average number of words per hour? Especially when you're drafting, it's so important to know your averages. What about plotting? Do you need time to plot or are you a pantser? How much time do you need? And sometimes if you're brand new to writing and you haven't actually finished a book before or you're just getting started, you're not going to know your averages yet because you need data over time to come up with an average. But it's important when you're first getting started to at least start paying attention to how long it takes you. If you've been writing lots of novels, like I've written 26 novels, you start to get to know how long it takes you. So I know that in an average 20-minute sprint, I can write 800 to 1,000 words. And that's kind of my average. If you want to know what your averages are, then something you can do is what I just said is writing sprints. So set a timer for 20 minutes, 15 minutes, whatever feels good to you. Just pick a time limit. I wouldn't go beyond an hour and I wouldn't go under, say, 10 minutes maybe, but come up with a set period of time and then just run a few sprints. So this is called the Pomodoro technique. I've talked about it before on my channel. You would basically just set a timer for, say, 20 minutes and then sit down and write. I have this very cute Erin Condren hourglass now that I absolutely love, and it goes for 20 minutes. So if you have something like this, or you have a kitchen timer or just a timer on your phone, you can set it for 20 minutes and then get to writing. Keep track of how many words you wrote. So at the end of that writing sprint, you can say, okay, I wrote 423 words during that 20 minutes. Take a little bit of a break, like 5 or 10 minutes, and then come back to it and do another 20-minute writing sprint. If you do that over the course of a week, say 1 or 2 sprints a day over the course of a week, you're going to have enough data to look back and say, on average, in 20 minutes, I can write 450 words. That data is going to be so important to you because when you are looking at your time and trying to estimate or guesstimate how long it's going to take you to write, say, a 50,000 word novel, now you can say, if I can write 450 words in 20 minutes. How many 20-minute sprints am I going to need to write 50,000 words? Let's figure that out. I don't do math in my head. My son, who's only 7, could probably do that math in his head. I cannot. So 50,000 words divided by 450 means that you're going to need about 111 20-minute sprints. If you can do 2 of those an hour, we divide that by 2. So you're going to need about 55 to 60 hours of writing to finish your rough draft. If you can write for an hour a day, which is two 20-minute sprints with a break in between, then it's going to take you about 55 to 60 days of writing. And that's going to help you set a realistic writing goal. That's why you need to know your averages. Same thing goes for all of the steps in the process. How long is it going to take you to plot this book? Do you have an average amount of time that it takes you to go through the plot? How long will it take you to write the rough draft? How long does it take you to edit? If, like I said, you're brand new to writing and you have never finished a book before, then maybe what you want to do is, we talk about we talk about the notebook challenge on this channel a lot. Create a new notebook where you can track all of your sprints, or set up a spreadsheet on your computer where you can track your sprints, track your time, and really pay attention to how long it took you to plot this book, how long it took you to write, the rough draft and that sort of thing. So once you know your averages, that's going to help you realistically project how long it's going to take you to finish a book. Where I was making mistakes before was, instead of actually taking my real average, I would take my best case scenario and say, my best writing sprint of all time was in 20 minutes, I wrote 1,500 words. So then I was using that best case scenario to figure out my targets. And that was a huge mistake. Be realistic by setting your real average. And if you want to actually be more realistic, you could actually bring that average down a little bit. So if your true average is 450 words, maybe you want to bump it down to 400 so that you give yourself a little bit of a cushion there. The second tip for setting realistic writing goals is to know your target. So now that you know your averages and about how long it takes you to complete each step on average, you need to know what you're headed towards. What's your target word count? What's your target for this book? So if you're writing a young adult fantasy book, for example, maybe your target is going to be 80,000 words. Or maybe you're writing an epic fantasy novel and your target is going to be 200,000 words. Maybe you're writing a standalone horror novel that's only going to be 65,000 words. Or maybe you're writing a romance novella that's only going to be 17,000 words. But if you want to calculate your realistic amount of time that it's going to take you, you need to know what your target word count is. Now, again, if you are not an experienced writer and you're just getting started, this is going to be a guessing game, and that's fine. Don't let it stress you out that you don't know exactly how many words this is going to be. I continually, even now, underestimate how long things are going to be. I'll say, I think this book's going to be 80. It comes up to be 95,000 words. So don't feel like this has to be perfect, but if you're setting a realistic goal for yourself, you've got to have some kind of target that you think you're working toward. So either figure out from your outline how long you think it's going to be, or just take an average. Like most YA novels are 70,000 words, so I'm going to shoot for 70,000 words. And then you can just adjust it and learn as you go. And where this will help you is if you know you write 1,000 words on average, 1,000 words an hour, and you're writing a 50,000 word book, then you can know that you're going to need about 50 hours, because 50,000 words divided by 1,000 an hour is 50 hours. So that is going to help you come up with how many hours it's going to take you to finish the rough draft. Tip number 3 is to know your schedule. So rather than just saying to yourself, well, I know I'm going to write 1,000 words a day, if you want to be realistic, you have to actually pull out a calendar and see how many working days you have. Because if you just say, I'm going to start today and I'm going to write for the next 50 days, 1,000 words a day, maybe you're not taking into consideration that it's your husband's birthday, or that you have a big exam coming up at school, or that you've got this big project at work and you're going to be out of town for a conference for 3 days over the next 60 days. You have to really take out a calendar and figure out how many working days you have. So when you pull out your calendar, you need to identify those days where you have stuff going on that you're just not likely to be writing. It could be something going on with your kids. It could be something going on if you're a student with your school. It could be something like conferences or whatever. But just identify those days where you're not likely to write. And this is another mental place. I used to be, when I was making those crazy schedules, I used to say to myself, like, even if I was going to be at a big conference, I would say, well, I'll get up early in the morning or right before bed, I'm still going to write those 1,000 words. There was literally zero chance I was going to be writing any words while I was at a major conference. Those things take up so much time and energy. There was just no way. I'm not the type of person who's going to sit down and write those 1,000 words. So the fact that I took those days into consideration, expecting myself to write, was just setting myself up for failure and not being realistic at all. So if you want to be realistic, pull out that calendar, know your schedule, figure out how many hours a day you have to work, and figure out how many days you're actually going to be working. It may take you 50 days to finish the rough draft, 50,000 words, but they might not be 50 consecutive days. There might be some days in between there where you have to take some time off. So give yourself that time and know your schedule. Then the final tip that I have for you is you have your averages, you have your target, and now you've figured out your schedule. Always add additional time. So let's say you said it was going to take you the next 90 days to finish this book. Like you were going to finish it in Q4 coming up of 2019. And say you were super realistic. You took Thanksgiving week off, you took Christmas week off, and you're giving yourself, New Year's Eve off as well. So you've given yourself those days, but that is all the time you've given yourself. If you really want to set a realistic writing goal and you've been someone who struggled in the past with hitting those deadlines, then I highly encourage you to take additional time. So instead of saying, I'm only going to take these 5 days off over the next 90 days, really give yourself like an extra week. The same way that you get sick days when you have a job or whatever, you have, the sick days that you're allowed to take or vacation leave, give yourself sick days when it comes to setting your writing schedule, because there are, I guarantee you, going to be some days coming up where you just don't feel like writing, or something comes up and it's an emergency, or you're just not able to write. And if that happens 1 or 2 times, there's no way to catch up, because you're already giving yourself the amount of time that you have. How are you going to catch up that time without feeling stressed? So give yourself additional sort of sick days to be more realistic. I think that one of the worst things that we can do to ourselves when we're trying to set writing deadlines and writing goals is to expect ourselves to be working at our maximum, most amazing capacity times 10. Don't expect yourself to be the number one best version of you every single day, because it's probably just not going to happen. We can motivate ourselves to a certain extent. We can really set ourselves up for success, but there's always going to be things that come up unexpectedly. There's going to be days where we don't feel well. We have headaches. We have, some of us deal with chronic illnesses or depression. Some of us have, a lot of things going on with our family or our jobs or school, and you just have to give yourself that leeway. But the more realistic you can truly be, the more you're going to feel at ease and at peace with what you're doing. If you are pushing yourself like to the limit, maybe you can do it for 1 or 2 books or 1 or 2 quarters, but eventually you're going to burn out and you're going to feel stressed and you're going to feel behind and you're going to feel like a failure. And that is going to put you in a place where it's very difficult to not only love what you're writing, but to really put your full self into it. And there's just no need to live in a state of constant stress and overwhelm. So do yourself a favor. Get to know your averages. If you don't know them yet, then work out a system to figure out your averages. We did a word sprint challenge earlier this year, and I have a word sprinting group. If you are a writer and you would like to join the word sprint group for Heart Breathings, feel free to join it. I will put a link down below where you can come join us. And we're going to be doing some fun averages and word sprints together for NaNoWriMo this year, and probably some for Preptober coming up next month. So I'd love to have you join us. You can find that link for the Facebook group down below, but know your averages. If you don't already know them, work toward getting to know them and keeping track of them. Then know your target. What's your target word count goal? What's your target for how long this book is going to be? And then know your schedule. Know what days you're available to work, what days you're not. And then finally, give yourself some extra sick days or mental health days there in between so that you have a buffer. If you think it's going to take you 6 weeks to finish the book, add a couple additional weeks and give yourself 8 weeks so you have that breathing room in case something happens or comes up and you need to take time off. And I promise you'll thank me for that later. The worst thing that can happen if you give yourself those 8 weeks is that you finish early, right? And then you'll feel really good. But it's better to have that extra time and feel peace and relief and like you're right on target and have that confidence, because that is going to help you to really be more creative and be more joyful in your writing. And that just has, the same way the stress has that trickle down effect, so does the joy. It has that trickle through your whole life effect. And the more joyful you are, the more you're enjoying the process, the better your writing's going to be, and the better you're going to be in terms of showing up for your family and for the people that you love. And you're just going to feel better on a daily basis. So give yourself that extra time and don't expect yourself to be superhuman when you're writing. I featured this on my channel last year when I was talking about how to set realistic deadlines for your writing, but I'm also going to link down below to a freebie that you can get over on my blog at heartbreathings.com. So it's just a sheet to help you kind of write out what your deadlines are for your writing schedule. So you might find that useful to go along with this. If you have already signed up for my mailing list, then you can find a link to download that if you don't already have it in your email from me this week. So make sure to go find that in your email, in your inbox. But before you go, I also wanted to mention that my HB90 Bootcamp is now open for enrollment. This only opens a few times a year, but what we do in this course is it starts on Thursday, September 19th with a live kickoff call from me where you get lots of motivation and information about what you're going to get over the course of the weekend. Then we spend the entire weekend really focusing on what is your long-term vision for your life, and then coming up with a 90-day plan that is going to help you move towards your biggest goals in life. And we break down the big goals into manageable projects and tasks. So you want to talk about setting realistic writing goals. This is going to help you set realistic goals. It tells you, we go through how to look at your schedule. We go through how to really break down those projects and tasks. You can see I don't have my Kanban board behind me. If you've been watching me for a while in my old house, you could always see my Kanban board. It's on this wall over here. So I'm probably going to shift where I'm recording because I know a lot of you like to see the Kanban board and the process, the progress that I have throughout the year. But for now, it was just easier to record with my desktop computer. So hopefully the Kanban board will make a reappearance. But at the end of the course, the HB90 course, I take you through how to set up your Kanban board with all of your projects and tasks lined up there for the next 90 days. It is a super powerful program, and it really has a potential to change your life. And this applies not only to writers, but to everyone. I've had realtors and artists and teachers and all kinds of professions take this course to help them with their goals. So it's really good for anyone, but it is specifically tailored towards writers as well. And I would super love to have you join us. You can find a link to sign up for this Q4 version of the course down below. So you have until Thursday evening, September 19th to join us before the live kickoff call. Now with the course, you also get a free Q4 HB90 planner, which is a printable planner that I've shown here on my channel. I'll link to some videos showcasing that planner down below. You not only get lifetime access to the 3-day bootcamp course, you also get lifetime access to a Facebook group community that is amazing, full of great people who are all working toward their goals. And we do a weekly accountability post and motivational posts and sometimes live videos to really pump you up and get your review and everything else going. So it's a great community. It's a great course. I would super love to have you join me, and you can find all information about that down below. But I hope you enjoyed this video on how to set realistic writing goals. It's definitely something that I struggled with for a long time, and something that I am going to be getting back into now that I've had my baby girl, and I'm getting back into writing after a little bit of a break during the pregnancy. So I'm going to be right there with you guys setting these writing goals, and I hope this has helped. If it has, make sure to comment down below and let me know if you have struggled with setting realistic writing goals. And I would also love to hear where you are in your writing process. Have you finished your first book? Have you written lots of books, or are you just getting started? So let me know in the comments so I can get to know more about you. All right, guys, if you enjoyed this video and you're new to my channel, go ahead and hit that like button and hit the subscribe button, as well as that notification bell, so that you'll get notified when new videos come up from me. I am so excited excited to be back after the birth of my sweet baby girl, Evie. And I've got a lot of great stuff to share with you guys this fall as we get towards NaNoWriMo. So I hope that you'll join us and subscribe. Okay guys, I will see you in my next video, and hopefully I will see you in the HB90 Bootcamp as well. Bye.